there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Today's video is going to be a little bit different, but I get asked all the time, which distress oxides should I buy first? There are so many in the collection and I just want a guide as to what I could start with purchasing. So as for oxides, what are they? Well, the Distress Oxide ink pads are water reactive dye and pigment ink fusion, and this creates an oxidized effect when it's sprayed with water. You can use it with stamps, stencils, direct to surface, blending tools and foams. You can also use the re-inkers for a whole lot of options also. I do think it's a good idea to get the re-inkers eventually, not necessarily all at once, but all you do is open up the ink pad. Make sure you have given the re-inker a really good shake to mix up everything in there. It's got a little mixing ball in there too that helps you along with that process. And then I just pop a little bit around the ink pad, and then sometimes I will use like a little card or something to smooth it over. You could use a stamp to kind of help spread the ink, and you have re-inked your ink pad. Now I do just want to say this is completely and utterly my opinion. This is kind of the video that I wish I had seen before I started purchasing anything. Now I have 3 inks in my whole ink collection. That is aside from my kind of the specialized ones, but I go with these 3 brands and this covers all my needs. So on the right are the Simon Hurley dye inks. These are straight dye. They are great for ink blending. They are water reactive, so they are able to do lots of watercoloring kind of techniques, and they come in these little ink pads which are stackable. They kind of click together and stack. The next brand that I go with is the VersaFine Clear. These are a straight pigment ink, and these give a beautiful crisp stamping impression. I love these for stamping. Because these are pigment ink, they stay wet long enough, and I can also emboss over top of them with a clear embossing powder, so that gives me pretty much all of my options for embossing. And the third type of ink pad that I have are my Distress Oxide inks. Now, this is completely my style, but I am starting off with the blues. I would go with Salty Ocean as my mid and Tumbled Glass as my light. Getting 2 colors is a great idea if you are able to, because that way you are able to do some ink blending. For the yellows, Squeezed Lemonade for my light and Mustard Seed for my mid color. And then when it comes to reds, I pretty much only have Candied Apple. I don't have any other reds in Distress Oxides, and I have found that this does me just fine. Now, colors that are hard to blend, because those are obviously your primary colors. Purples I find are hard to make with a blend, so I would purchase these. I use Shaded Lilac for the light and Wilted Violet for the mid-strength purple. And again, you can blend these. Obviously blue and red technically make purple, but again it's tricky. So the pinks, I'm going with Picked Raspberry and Spun Sugar. Spun Sugar is my light color and Picked Raspberry is my mid. And then for the greens, I have Mowed Lawn as my mid and Twisted Citron, which is kind of my light. And I guess I'll show you later on, but Shabby Shutters would also be a really good light green here. But I find that I use Twisted Citron so much more, and it is much more versatile. Now, when it comes to blending, why haven't I got an orange here in this little mix of recommended colors? Well, that is because it is really easy to make orange. Mustard Seed as my yellow and Candied Apple as my red. Now, this is not perfect ink blending. I am just using some domed foam blenders. I'm popping some of the Candied Apple up the top, and you want to start off light with ink blending. The more color, the more saturated you make it, I think the easier the blending does get. But I am just going to turn this upside down, mainly because that makes it easier for me. But here I'm going to blend on some of the mustard seed and then slowly work it down into the red, and that is going to create a really nice orange. As with all ink blending, if you want a nice smooth blend, then going back and forward between your 2 colors is the best way to achieve that really smooth blend. And this is in real time, so this is exactly how long it takes me to get a relatively smooth blend there between the yellow and the red, and we've created a nice kind of orange in the middle. So that is why I didn't kind of recommend an orange in the middle if you feel like you can easily create those with a little bit of blending. But those are the main colors that I would recommend, and I wished I had started off purchasing. I actually don't remember what I really started off purchasing. I've had these for a lot of years now, but I definitely know what I use the most and what I wish I knew. Now coming back to the orange, Spiced Marmalade is my go-to orange. I use this all the time. This is definitely my favorite orange. So if you were going to purchase an orange, that's what I would include in there. These are my 12 colors that I use the absolute most. Now, when it comes to a rainbow, people often ask which colors I use for a rainbow. I use these. So Candied Apple, Spiced Marmalade, Mustard Seed, Mowed Lawn, Salty Ocean, and Wilted Violet. And that is my 6 colors of the rainbow. And I find that that is what I go to every single time. I do just want to reiterate that this is completely my choice, and I know this will not be everybody's kind of color palette. Now, if you kind of like shabby chic, then you might prefer these kind of colors a little bit more. And these are all the lights of the colors that I recommended in the beginning. So I find that if you don't want that kind of bold mid color, then these lights go together really, really nicely. And these are all a pale shade, and they seem to kind of blend well and do well together side by side. Here is the Shabby shutters that I talked about a little bit earlier on as being a light green. I think this one is a really good to go in with these light colors. However, I definitely find that I use the Twisted Citron, which is the light green that I recommended in the beginning. I use that a lot more. I find it a lot more versatile. But these colors are gorgeous and they work nicely. Now, if it were a few months later or 6 months later and you are ready to purchase a few more inks, then I would recommend a dark for each of these. That way you have so many more options. Blending is just going to be much easier. You can go for 3 colors. I really do recommend a dark, like a light, a medium, and a dark. As I said, it takes a time to build up these stash. So for the greens, I have the Shabby Shutters or Twisted Citron as your light, the Mowed Lawn as your mid, and Rustic Wilderness as your dark. Rustic Wilderness is a relatively new color, but it is definitely one that I reach for time and time again and has become my go-to dark green. As for the blues, Tumbled Glass is my light, Salty Ocean as my mid, and I guess I should recommend Blueprint Sketch as my dark, and that does make a really nice blend if you're wanting to blend them all together, but I will admit that actually my favorite dark blue is Chipped Sapphire. Now, this one is a gorgeous, gorgeous dark blue. It's kind of almost one shade darker again. It's a little bit different shade of blue, but Chipped Sapphire would have to be one of my favorite colors in the whole Distress Oxide range. Now, as for the rest, I don't really have a dark color that I can recommend. However, for the purple, I think the new Villainous Potion would be a good addition, and that is something that I'm thinking about purchasing. Now, coming into the special mentions category, where I think these are just great colors, is Cracked Pistachio. This is a gorgeous, unique color, and I love it. I use it a lot. The other one is Vintage Photo. This means I can turn anything vintage. It gives it that brown, distressed kind of look that Tim Holtz is known for. I like that style occasionally. I only have one brown, and it is the Vintage Photo brown, which I love. So that would be my pick. As I said, this is just what works for me. So I hope that this video has been helpful. I'm not necessarily saying that this will be perfect for you, but this is my recommendation based on what my style of crafting is. There will be links down in the description box below, but you can find these in so many places. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.